The sun slowly set on the horizon, casting a golden glow over the dark waters of the Amazon River. The large Portuguese caravels cut through the lazy waves with determination as Pedro Teixeira watched the vastness of the forest ahead. His tired blue eyes, worn from many voyages, remained fixed on the unknown. "Captain, we're entering uncharted territory," announced Gaspar Mendez, the chief navigator, holding the map firmly. "These rivers aren't fully mapped. Only rumors and legends from the natives." Teixeira glanced at the younger man, noting the worry in his eyes. "Rumors and legends are for those who lack the courage to explore the new," Teixeira replied firmly. "We're here to expand Portugal's domains, to find riches and new lands. We won't be stopped by ghost stories." Gaspar nodded, though a part of him remained uneasy. He had seen men lose their sanity in unknown seas before, but he had never sailed through waters as mysterious as these. In the distance, a group of natives watched the ships, their expressions unreadable. Later, while camping on the riverbank, Padre Anquita approached Teixeira. The priest, an austere figure with eyes that seemed to pierce through a man's soul, held a small crucifix in his hand. "Captain, the natives speak of an entity that inhabits these waters," Anquita began, his grave voice heavy with concern. "They call her Aira, the mother of the waters. They say she seduces men with her beauty and lures them to the depths of the river, from where they never return." Teixeira laughed, without humor. "Father, I didn't come all this way to be frightened by myths of mythical creatures. We're on a sacred mission, for the glory of God and Portugal. These men need faith and leadership, not superstitions." Anquita, however, was not convinced. "With all due respect, Captain, we should not underestimate forces we do not understand. These legends are ancient, and there is always a grain of truth in them." Teixeira turned to the river, where the water reflected the moonlight that was beginning to rise. He felt a slight breeze caress his face, carrying with it a strange fragrance he could not identify. "Let's see what this legend is capable of, Father," he murmured, more to himself than to the Jesuit. Meanwhile, Matilda, one of the few women on the expedition, walked alone along the riverbank, watching the calm flow of the water. Her husband, a respected officer, had died during the Atlantic crossing, and since then she had felt like a shadow among the men of the expedition. However, Matilda was more than she appeared to be. In her family, the women had always had a special connection with nature, a knowledge passed down from generation to generation, something she kept secret. "These waters are different," she murmured to herself, feeling a growing unease. "Something lives here, something not of this world." That night, as everyone slept, a soft melody began to spread throughout the camp. It was a delicate sound, like a woman's song, but filled with deep sadness. Gaspar was the first to wake up, his eyes opening slowly as he listened to the song. He felt his body being pulled towards the river, as if guided by an invisible force. "What is this?" he whispered, standing up and following the sound. On the river, the water seemed to shimmer under the moonlight, and he could swear he saw a female reflection among the waves. But before he could approach, Matilda grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "No!" she exclaimed, her green eyes wide with fear. "Don't listen to that song. It's the Aira." Gaspar, still confused, looked at her. "How do you know?" Matilda hesitated, knowing that revealing more could condemn her. "Just trust me, Gaspar. Don't go near the water at night. Nothing good will come of it. The enchantment of the waters." The next day was marked by palpable tension. The crew was agitated. The men exchanged nervous glances and whispered among themselves about what they might have heard during the night. Although most wouldn't admit it openly, many had felt the presence of that mysterious song. Teixeira, impatient, gathered his main team. "These rumors are starting to erode the crew's morale. We need to stay focused. Gaspar, prepare a team to explore further inland. We need more information about these lands and about whatever thing might be causing this panic." Gasper nodded, but before leaving, Matilda approached him again. "If you go into the forest, don't go alone. And if you find something you can't explain, return immediately." "Why do you seem to know so much, Matilda?" he asked, trying to decipher what lay behind those green eyes. "Just be careful," she replied evasively. "There are secrets here that not everyone is ready to know." The exploration team set out, with Gasper leading the way through the winding river and forest trails. As they advanced, the song returned, now stronger, more insistent. Gasper felt his mind becoming numb, as if a fog was slowly taking over his thoughts. "Do you hear that?" one of the men asked, his voice trembling with fear. "Keep moving," Gasper ordered, trying to maintain control. "Don't let these illusions get to you." They reached a clearing where they found ancient stone idols, covered in moss and partially submerged in water. Strange symbols were engraved on their surface, and Gasper felt a chill run down his spine as he touched them. "What is this?" another man asked nervously. "This doesn't look like the work of ordinary natives." Gasper didn't respond. He knew they were facing something very old, something that didn't belong to this world. Without warning, the water in the clearing began to bubble, and the song became deafening. One of the men, unable to resist, ran towards the water, disappearing beneath the surface before the others could stop him. "Get back to camp now!" Gasper shouted, trying to pull his men away from the danger. Upon returning, Gasper confronted Teixeira, his eyes filled with fear and anger. "Captain, something is very wrong here. This isn't just superstition. We're dealing with a force we don't understand." Teixeira, who had also begun to hear the song in his dreams, was torn between his skepticism and the growing evidence that something supernatural was at play. "We can't turn back now," he said, though his voice had lost some of its former firmness. "Not after everything we've been through to get here." The confrontation with the unknown. That night, the camp was engulfed by a sudden storm. Lightning split the sky, and the rain poured down in torrents, as if the very forest was trying to expel them. Padre and Kita, disturbed by recent events, decided it was time to act. "I will face this demon," he declared, clutching his cross tightly. "I will not allow a profane entity to condemn these souls." Teixeira, still fighting the voice that echoed in his mind, allowed the priest to perform the exorcism. They gathered on the riverbank, with the crew watching in silence, as Ankita began his prayers, sprinkling holy water into the turbulent waters. "Impure spirit, I exorcise you in the name of Christ," the priest thundered, his voice almost drowned out by the roar of the storm. For a moment, all was silent. Then, from the depths of the river, Iera emerged. Her beauty was terrifying, her long black hair floating around her body like a dark aura. Her green eyes gleamed with a malice that made even the bravest men recoil. "Who dares to challenge me?" Her voice was sweet and venomous at the same time, echoing through the night. Padre and Kita tried to continue the exorcism, but Iera smiled, a smile that promised only death. "You have no power over me," she whispered before summoning the storm in full fury. The river's waters rose like giant hands, grabbing the men and dragging them to the depths. Gasper tried to resist, but he was taken before he could scream. Padre and Kita, holding his cross, was swallowed by the darkness of the waters. Teixeira, desperate, ran to save the remaining men, but he knew they were lost. However, before he could be taken, Matilda appeared before him. "I know what to do," she said, with a calm that contrasted with the chaos around them. "I need to go to her." "No!" Teixeira shouted, trying to hold her back. But Matilda, with an expression of peace, pulled away, walking towards Iera. "It's me you want, not them," she said, extending her hands to the entity. Iera, intrigued, approached. "Why do you offer yourself? You know you'll never see the light of day again." "I know," Matilda replied, looking directly into Iera's eyes. But I also know that the sacrifice of a pure soul can satisfy your hunger, and I offer myself to save those who remain." Aera studied Matilda for a moment, then smiled, a smile full of approval. "Then come and be mine forever," Aera said, extending her hand. Matilda took it, and in an instant the storm ceased. The waters receded, and the river returned to its somber calm. Matilda was pulled into the depths along with Aera, disappearing forever. The final sacrifice. The few surviving members of the expedition, including a deeply shaken Teixeira, watched helplessly as Matilda vanished beneath the waters. The forest around them fell silent, as if mourning too. Teixeira, the man who once considered himself invincible, dropped to his knees on the riverbank, his eyes fixed on the spot where Matilda had disappeared. She's gone," he murmured, his voice breaking. Padre Anquita, miraculously saved, approached cautiously. He looked at Teixeira, but there were no words of comfort to offer. Both knew they had witnessed something beyond mortal comprehension. "We must leave, Captain," the priest finally said, "before she changes her mind." Teixeira slowly nodded, rising with the priest's help. He looked at the river one last time, the moonlight reflecting off the black waters. "May God have mercy on us," he whispered before starting to walk away. The return to the sea. The expedition, now reduced to a small fraction of its original number, made its way back down the river, sailing in silence. The remaining men were deeply shaken, their eyes empty of hope. When they finally reached the Atlantic, the horizon seemed as distant as their dreams of glory. Teixeira, silent throughout the return voyage, climbed onto the deck one last time when they sighted the coast of Portugal. The land he had so desired to expand now seemed insignificant compared to the horrors he had left behind. Upon docking in Lisbon, Teixeira disembarked without a word. He knew he could never tell the truth about what had happened. Who would believe him? Who would accept that a myth, a legend, could destroy an entire expedition? In the days that followed, Teixeira remained reclusive, his nights haunted by the sound of Matilda's voice and the gleam of Aera's eyes. He had become a broken man, knowing that the Amazon River held secrets he never should have attempted to uncover. One cold morning, he was found dead in his bed, a sad smile on his lips and a note beside him that simply read, "The black waters do not forget."